I used to teach my nursing students content-heavy lectures, covering the content with dozens of slides every hour. In my mind, more content equaled better prepared nursing students. This idea was challenged when I read almost 15 years ago, Educating Nurses, a call for radical transformation by Dr. Patricia Benner and her co-authors that detailed educational research to not just change, but transform how nursing is taught. As a result, my perspective began to shift regarding how I should prepare my students for real-world nursing practice. As a result of that book, I ended up contextualizing my content to nursing practice using authentic case studies from my lens of current practice, cut my lectures in half, and the way I taught fundamentally changed. So I'm going to share some key takeaways and the effect it had on my nursing students. And if we haven't met, my name is Keith, a fellow nurse educator and the founder of Keith RN. Takeaway number 1. Cutting lecture time gave my students more time to meaningfully apply the information they were learning. When I reduced lectures, I gained time for additional activities that truly develop the clinical judgment skills nurses must possess, using authentic unfolding case studies with no multiple choice questions, and then guided discussions. That's when I saw the light bulbs come on. Knowing facts about pharmacology and medications is good. But however, knowing how to use that knowledge with open-ended questions that emphasize clinical reasoning and then apply that information to intervene and make the correct judgment to advance the plan of care or recognize a problem before it progresses is what thinking like a nurse is all about. Takeaway number 2. Students came to class prepared to apply what they knew. Students knew they were responsible for preparing ahead. They were expected to read the assigned textbook pages and complete a short activity before my class lecture as a ticket to class. Class time became where we practice applying, not just where we would sit and listen to regurgitated textbook content that would prepare them for the next test. Students became more engaged and prepared with this shift. And this led to our third takeaway. Student engagement increased significantly. Students were no longer just sitting and listening for 50 minutes straight, taking notes. Instead, they would listen to a need-to-know, practice-based presentation of essential content, only 15 to 20 minutes in length, and then immediately begin applying their nurse thinking skills and what they learned in the classroom. Learning became active using patient scenarios from practice, and class time was much more engaging. It also grounded everything they were learning in real-world practice. Talking through nursing theory is one thing, but seeing how it is applied and then used is something else entirely. Also, if you want a starting point for how someone can cut their lecture content in an effective way, we have a free download that walks you through how to do just that. It isn't as complex as it might seem. The link to download is in the description. Takeaway number 4. Teaching less content actually led to my students retaining significantly more. When I first started teaching, I felt this constant pressure to cover as much material as possible. There's just so much information in nursing, and I thought the more you pour into a lecture, the more my students will learn. But the reality was the opposite. My students became overwhelmed, unable to apply or recognize what was most important from what they were learning. The irony is that once I intentionally cut back and focused on fewer need-to-know content and concepts, their retention skyrocketed. They weren't drowning in details anymore. They were able to truly engage, understand, and remember what mattered most. And takeaway number 5, teaching became fun again. I started enjoying teaching in a whole new way. Watching my students lean in, engage in, and put the pieces together like real nurses gave me a renewed enthusiasm that I hadn't always felt before in the classroom. I was always a passionate nurse educator, But once I cut the excess content, that passion came with a sense of purpose. I wasn't just teaching them information. I was making a difference, fulfilling my calling as an educator, and having a great time doing it. The last and most important takeaway is the remarkable growth in my students' clinical judgment skills. When I shifted away from cramming in infobesity and so much content, it opened the door for deeper application of nurse thinking. Instead of rushing through lectures, we spent class time working through authentic scenarios, pausing to analyze and making decisions like practicing nurses. We practiced the thinking of practice consistently in the classroom. And the difference was striking. Students weren't just remembering facts and memorizing to pass a test, but they were thinking and reasoning at a much higher level. Our time together was finally being spent on what truly matters, building and practicing the clinical judgment that defines safe nursing practice. If this is something you would like to possibly try in your own class, which I highly encourage, download our free handout on how to structure a practice-based presentation is linked below.